that I had done. So welcome. We are gonna wait for another minute and we'll get started. Those who are joining, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening. If you would like, please put in the chat where you came from so we could know. Okay, we have Rome, we have London. So good evening. Buonasera, bonsoir, здравствуйте. Okay, let's give it another minute and I'm going to go ahead and get started. For those who just joined, welcome. We are sharing in the chat where we came from, where we are from. So if you would like, introduce yourself and Stuttgart, thank you. Paris, Chicago, I used to live there. Wonderful. California. For those who celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Okay, wonderful. Let's go ahead and get started. No matter where you are in the world, welcome to this webinar. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning if you're in California. Thank you for joining. I'm very happy to have you all here. I would like to make it an interactive conversation. It's not only for me to share my knowledge, but also for all of us to share with each other. That is why throughout the presentation, you will see poll questions that will allow us to learn from each other. My presentation is Unleash Your Inner CEO of Projects. And even though by trade, I'm a project management professional and the published author of the book on project management, the presentation that I will share is not only about project management. It's about any job and even life and just the mindset and the approach that you could use to be in charge of your own destiny, whether it is professionally or personally. Even though I will be using project management as most of my examples, I will try to add some examples from non-project management activities and maybe even some personal examples as well, so that you could see how it could be applied outside of just project management world. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and just a second, 1 second. Oh, here we go. So, and this is not a project management slide. So to introduce the topic of our discussion, I would like you to take you to the slopes, to the ski slopes, somewhere in the winter ski resort. For those of you who ski, but most people, even though you don't ski, you will know that there are easy trails and they're always on the bottom. And people just start there, and many just don't know even how to ski and just come to try it out, sometimes with friends or parents. Those are not experienced skiers, and they just learn. It's very crowded. People sometimes don't know what they do. Many times in life, we're fortunate and not so fortunate to be in those green slopes, whether they are at work or in our personal life. Whenever we start something brand new, we are on those green slopes and just trying our luck and applying little skills that we have. Some of us will continue on those paths that we start, and some will drop off and start something else, realizing that it's not for them. However, those who will progress, they will go to the blue slopes, as they're called in the United States. I believe red and probably blue in Europe. But those are medium level slopes, and they're more advanced. The views are becoming quite beautiful, and you do need some skill level to ski there. And you need to be in charge, at least to a degree, to successfully ski in those slopes. So as we go from the beginner level to the medium level, from the followers, naturally, we become more of leaders of our destiny. We choose the slopes, the complexity of them. We start talking the jargon. Oh, today I skied an easy blue, but tomorrow I'm gonna ski more advanced blue. We feel in control, and sometimes we don't. And at this stage, still some will continue and some may drop off. But those who will continue will go to the black terrains, the most advanced slopes right on the top. The views are usually spectacular and breathtaking, but also slopes are very steep and scary, and you do need to have experience and skills in order to ski there. And some people get to the top, myself included, and take skis off and walk down a few steps because it just seems too scary. And that is okay, probably happened to many of us. So at that time, you do need to be quite in charge of what you're doing, and you need to make a decision for yourself and maybe sometimes for others. And the decision, like getting off the skis, or instead of skiing, just walking down parallel of the slope for a bit, just to go past a path that seems way too steep for your level. Those are the decisions that the leaders need to make. Those who don't make the decisions of that sort, whether it is to go forward or even to call it quit, or even go back down in a ski lift, those sometimes have accidents, or you know, something happens, or they do ski down, but they get scared and never ski again. So this is what defines the leaders, but also distinguishes them from the followers. Those abilities to assess the situations and make a decision whether you should proceed, or advise another person. If you see somebody struggling on the slope and the person asks for help, it is okay not only to encourage to go forward, but also say, hey, this seems way above your level. Maybe you should try to just kind of walk down. Those are the decisions that leaders face and make, as opposed to followers who just blindly get on the top, ready or not, and try to go down. Maybe they will make it down without accidents, maybe they will not. But this is what defines people who lead and distinguishes them from those who follow. And those decisions are applicable to everyday life as well as to your jobs. These are the decisions that define you as a leader, that will make people look up to you and make people follow you and ask you for advice. And it's applicable to all aspects and every aspect of our life. And we will talk more about it throughout the presentation. So let's start our first poll and see. And by the way, it is absolutely okay to be a follower. Some people are naturally that way, and that is perfectly fine. Not everybody can lead, and not everybody should. But it is also understanding where you are, and maybe if you are naturally more of a follower, and of course in this crowd everybody is a leader, I did not expect any difference. So those who follow, it's a good thing to recognize that that's who you are, and maybe ask others for advice and input. And that too is also a very good decision, whether it is at work or in your personal life. I'm gonna give it another minute. We have 44 seconds for the poll, so I'm gonna pause here and give you the chance to respond. No, I think it's the other way. It's gonna end in 8 seconds. Okay, those who still want to respond, please. Okay, so we all are natural leaders in this group. I think that's quite anticipated. I thought I would see this result. A small world certainly attracts certain types of personalities, and they are more energetic, leaders type personalities, international people. So fits the profile, no surprises there. So let's proceed then and discuss how we could unleash our inner CEOs, our inner leaders. Apologies, somehow I have a problem switching slide. Okay, here we go. So how you unleash your inner CEO? What does it mean? It could be literal or it could be figurative. But in both senses, it is how do you recognize your leadership skills, how you hone them, how you could make yourself a leader or progress as a leader, and how does the environment you are in changes you or influences your ability to lead and empowers you. So in order to operate as a CEO, you need to have three main components. You need to have a structure around you that empowers you to lead. You could be an outstanding leader, but if you are in the environment that does not allow you to do that, unfortunately, in those circumstances, you either need to leave or sit back and kind of, hold your leadership powers inside you. You need the infrastructure. You again may be a great leader, but if you don't have time to lead, if all you are hired to do in your job is to execute certain simple tasks and you're being held accountable for their execution, there is nothing you could do. Again, your inner CEO will stay within you. And then, of course, there is the leadership skills and the subject matter expertise, back to the skiing slopes, your ability to ski, your knowledge of the terrains, your ability to recognize which blue slopes are easy and you can do them easily and quickly, and those are toward the end of the day when you are tired, and which blue slopes still marked as blue are more advanced and will require your fresh thinking and your better skills, and maybe your strategy will be to ski those early in the morning when you're fresh and energized. So those are the knowledge and skills, the subject matter expertise, the ability to understand what surrounds you and how the surrounding influences you. All of those make you a leader or a CEO. So organizational structure empowers you to lead. Organizations are very different. Some are dinosaurs in structure and some are very modern with the modern technology that they employ. What is important is once you start a new job or you move within the department, or you even think that you want to just advance in your current job without changing anything, just kind of become being viewed differently by your peers and your boss, you need to recognize where do you work and what surrounds you. In order for you to operate as a CEO or as a leader, you need to understand what structure you have and how that structure supports or doesn't support you to be a leader. And there are different types of organizations. Some are more administrative and facilitation focused, and some are integration and business focused. And I will talk in a minute about what they are and give you some examples. And these organizations view leadership differently. And some more of a program-oriented or integration and business-focused organizations, they allow you to lead. And some more place you in a position where you just execute tasks, some simple administrative tasks. And it is important to recognize where you are at any given time and whether you are empowered to lead or not. So on the administration focused and facilitation focused, and again, this is more of a project management terminology, but don't take it in such a way. It's applicable to a much broader spectrum. So these organizations are old-fashioned, highly vertical, hierarchical, with the boss and then the boss of the boss and the boss of the boss and multiple levels of approvals and vertical chains of commands. Leadership and empowerment in those organizations is very difficult unless you made it to the top. So those are the organizations where people work for years, and every 5 years they move up the chain a little bit, and another step and another step. And at some point you do reach the top, and in that point you can lead. But up until then, it is more of an administrative tasks. You have the reports to complete, the documents to write, and that's what you do in order to do your job. And there are more progressive organizations, usually consulting companies with much flatter structure, where you could influence the decisions right from the get-go without being fully empowered at the level of a director or executive director in those organizations. Here you could be empowered to make a difference. And how you make a difference is by recognizing that something is being done right or something is being done wrong. For instance, a simple example, I once worked with the person who got promoted at a vertical organization. He stepped into his new job and surveyed the department that he now at that time was leading, and found out that the department was producing 15 reports every month. Seems great, right? Instead of taking it at the face value, okay, we've always produced those 15 reports, he examined those reports and found out who the owners or requesters of those informations were. He prepared a simple table, listed all 15 reports and who asked for those reports and who was using those reports. And the discovery was quite shocking. 10 out of 15 people who requested 15 reports left the company. So the reports were going nowhere. Nobody wanted those reports. They became outdated. And those who replaced those people who left didn't quite want the reports. So he eliminated those no longer needed reports and instead added new reports that were needed by the newcomers, by those who came in place of those who left. So this is an example of a leader versus a follower. Somebody who made the decision, analyzed the current situation, even though he was empowered to a degree, he took an initiative to do that, and analyzed the current state and quickly, with the knowledge of his analysis, understood that a lot of work that his now new department that he just became a director of was doing was not quite needed. I'm sure each of us could think of a similar example, but it is how we act in those situations, whether we just go with the motion, with the force of inertia and continue the work that we inherited, or we examine it and decide whether it is the right path, or maybe it is, or maybe it is not, and how the path should be changed. That is what distinguishes a leader from the follower. Back to this drawing though for a couple of minutes. So let me give you good examples of the integration-focused and business-focused organizations. The organizations that derive synergies from their operations and ask their people to sort of collect information at the front levels and analyze it. The two examples that I'm going to give you are from London, actually. About a year ago, I was there for my book tour, and of course, it's a beautiful city, and I've been there a few times, but that particular time, I took a bus tour, and then later that day, a boat tour of the river. What truly impressed me is that when, with the bus tour ticket, I came to the river for the boat tour, the people who checked me in and allowed me on the boat asked me whether I took the bus tour or not. And I said, yes, I did, but why are you asking? And they said that we're collecting information, how many people from the bus tours come to the river tours, and it's all in order to sort of integrate, integration-focused organization, right? Integrate the, the two operations of the bus tour company and the boat tour company, and make them more cohesive for the benefit of the tourists. That seemed fantastic to me, but people in the front line were empowered to talk to me and ask me those questions so they could collect information and make a decision what makes sense. And the business-focused organization, I'm in healthcare, and the US healthcare system is highly disintegrated. But what truly impresses me, again, back to the United Kingdom, is the very cohesive government-driven healthcare system in the United Kingdom. So that is a business-focused organization that very much, where the operations are quite streamlined and the focus is on the whole patient. And of course, each and every organization has its gaps and evolving and moving. And it's important not only to recognize where do you work, but also to understand where is the organization going. There are multiple internal and external forces that make the organization change. Of course, pandemic would be a very simple example that drastically changed the economy of the world. Strategic shifts, growth, government changes in the government, for instance, Brexit, changes in the legislative environment. All of this changes the organizations and changes their courses. But it is important for us as individuals to realize not only where we are today, but also what is the potential of the organization, where is it going, where is it evolving, and how it will impact us so that we could adjust our personal courses as well. And with that, let me launch another poll, please. Okay. The poll is, does your organizational structure allow you to unleash your inner CEO? Okay, it is quite interesting. We are close to about 50-50 and not typical and not atypical. So in majority of my presentations, I got about the same results. And even from my personal experience, I could say that probably half of my career was more of a, with the old fashioned companies and half in consulting with much more flat and progressive structure. And it is perfectly fine. I'm not saying that you need to change your job. What is important is that you need to recognize where you work and what is the potential that the place you're working at, what is the potential for you. And maybe it is okay, not all the time in our lives we can be leaders. There are personal circumstances that could affect the situation and may, like maybe you are at the job, but also at night you are going for your MBA or any kind of graduate degree. So it is okay to have a maybe slower or more old-fashioned job, so you could just do your job and go to your grad school, or you have personal circumstances. It is perfectly fine to be in the organization where you cannot be a leader, as long as it's okay with you at the period of time that you are in the circumstances that you are in. But what is important is to understand what it is and be conscious about it and know what the potential is and either be okay with it or strategically think about changing the job, keeping the organizational structure in mind. And if you want to be a leader, but you are at a company that does not allow you to do that, it is important for you to recognize that, and in your next job, factor it as one of the key dimensions in your job search, or be okay with it, knowing that you have personal or professional circumstances that you need to sort of spread yourself thin for a moment, and being just a follower and do your job on a daily basis is just fine for a particular period of time. Okay. Project infrastructure that enables you to lead. Even though it is important to recognize where you are in terms of what organization, whether you can lead in the organization as we just talked, even if you are in the organization that allows you to lead, it's not enough. you need time to lead. If every job, every role, every personal aspect of life has routine tasks, and if you do not streamline them, for lack of a better word, you will not be able to make decisions. If you are too focused on repetitive, simple tasks, if there is a chaos around you, for instance, let's say your home is not as organized as it should be, and every time you do something, you spend a lot of time searching for things that you need. That takes time from planning your life better, maybe planning a fantastic next vacation or planning a winery tour with your friends. If you're so focused on just very simple daily tasks and they take so much of your time and your energy and you're frustrated, that takes time from doing bigger things and being a leader of those bigger things. The same, of course, at work. If you're not using the tools or you don't have tools, and every single task takes you hours, and at the end of the day you're exhausted, but you did make it through all the documents that you need to go through. However, there is no time to think, to step back, analyze the situation or analyze the report and say, hey, maybe this report is no longer needed. Maybe we need to change 5 out of 10 sections of that report. If you don't have time to do that, and you just only have barely enough time to produce the report, even if you aspire to be a leader, you will still continue to be a follower. So you need to free up time to do bigger and better things. So how do you do that? It's identifying the tools, organizing your life in every aspect, organizing your office, organizing tools that you use, organizing production of the reports. For instance, instead of manually typing every time, you could maybe utilize SharePoint site and have automatic reports generated from SharePoint, so you could only need copy and paste from SharePoint. It takes time to initially set up the structure, but once you're done, the repetitive tasks will become easier and faster. And that's what would allow you time to step back from those daily tasks and start thinking as a leader and assessing everything that you do with the critical perspective. Is it needed? Maybe yes, maybe no. Is it needed the way it is? Maybe the report needs to be changed. Maybe your personal circumstances need to change. But if you don't allow the time for that strategic thinking, you will never discover what is valid and what is not. So arbitrarily, about 60% of the time that you have in your life and at your work should be spent on leading, and 40% on executing your daily routine tasks. This is an arbitrary breakdown. Of course, it in some instances or in some given days, it may be a different breakdown. But if you strive to free up quite a bit of your time for leading and thinking strategically, as opposed to just doing your daily routine tasks, it may change your life for better in personal and professional circumstances. I'm going to give you a simple example. If let's say every year you go on a vacation to the same resort, so you have routine, you prepare for the trip, you spend a lot of time packing, but very little time researching, and you just routinely go to the same place. You will never discover any new places. You will still have a vacation, and it's going to be a nice repetitive vacation, but you will not see the world. You will not see the jungles of the Amazon. You will not see the safari. You will not see the Antarctica. You will just see that one resort. So if you step back from that routine repetitiveness of the tasks, only focusing and spending hours in packing luggage, instead, if you somehow figure out the ways to quickly pack the luggage, but you spend more of your time researching and thinking, you know, what is my dream vacation? And maybe it's not that resort. For me, it is Antarctica. For somebody, it's something else. But if you repeat the same thing again and again, you will never know. So instead of just doing all the packing for the trip, you should spend more time, or 60% leading the choice of that trip, leading the research that will lead to your dream vacation. And then you will pack rather quickly, still focusing on the right things, but kind of, pulling everything together rather quickly. So that's what changes your life and your perspective, is when you sort of step out of your routine and drop your daily routine tasks, or learn to perform them quicker by investing time in organizing and planning up front, in sorting through the clutter, eliminating the clutter, doing things in a more efficient way. If you free up your time and start focusing, instead of on execution of simple daily tasks, which are still needed, I mean, everybody needs to do laundry. If you step away from that to a degree possible and start focusing on bigger tasks and thinking, what is it that you want to do and how differently you could do it, that's what would sort of make you a leader. And the same applies to the job. Just a few minutes ago, I gave an example of a newly appointed director who, instead of just taking the reports that he inherited at the face value, he researched if the reports are still needed and changed the structure and the workload of his subordinates. But he didn't just do it arbitrarily, saying those are old reports. He did the research, applying the knowledge and the subject matter expertise, and made the educated decision, also persuading his subordinates and co-workers that the change is needed, and that many of the 15 reports became obsolete. And our next poll, so your infrastructure, does it enable you to lead? Do you have the time that you need? And if you don't, maybe think about how you could make the time that you need. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Wonderful. Thank you very much for your responses. Very interesting breakdown. So we have 70% of people who feel that their infrastructures enable them to lead, and 30% that think that that's not the case. And that's great. This is where the change starts. It is your ability to recognize that the change is needed, and maybe a better infrastructure and better surrounding is needed. And maybe not, maybe in a particular given time in your life, it is better that way, and that is fine too. It's just as long as you're aware of it and you know that things could be better and your surrounding and your infrastructure could be better. And when the time comes, you will be willing to change it. That is a great discovery as well. As long as you are kind of aware of what it is that is around you, how efficient it is for you to support you, and what and when you can change to make it better. And now leadership skills and subject matter expertise. This is what makes you a CEO or a leader. I gave you a couple of examples, the skiing example, the reports at the job example. And in both of those situations, people who advance to the top, whether it is on the ski slopes or in the department that produces the reports. In both cases, the leadership took place from the knowledge. Whether you are a skier and you want to go to more advanced blue slopes or black slopes, or you want to lead the department in a new way, it is not just a decision, today I want to ski in more advanced slopes, or today I will change the course of my department. All of it comes from the subject matter expertise. You learn to ski, you talk to people about skiing, maybe you watch skiing competitions, so maybe you participate in some. And you start with the experience. The more you ski, the more you understand the terrains, the slopes, the ice patches, and you face those different circumstances time and time again, and you start making informed decisions from your own expertise, or frequently at jobs which are much more complex than just skiing, you learn to engage subject matter experts in various areas where you are not, so that they could give you the advices, and cumulatively you could make decisions. The most important jobs in the world, such as being a president of a country, requires tremendous number of advisors, simply because one human being cannot be expert, or the president in this case cannot be expert in so many different daily situations, from military to civil, economic, pandemics. There is no living human being who could know all of it. And this is where subject matter expertise comes very handy. And it is important to have your own, and also recognize other people around you, whether it is in your personal life or professional life, who you could ask for advice. We all are doing it in our personal lives. I'm sure if you know somebody who is great in cooking and you need a particular recipe, you will call that person, but you won't call the person who always calls takeouts or carryouts or Uber Eats for the advice on the recipes. So it is with time and with expertise, with experience, we learn to recognize those subject matter experts. And even on the ski slopes, if you're stuck and you see a really advanced skier and he offers help, that's probably a good moment to say, hey, I'm stuck here, would you recommend I ski down, or, you know, or should I just walk down? So this is the recognition of the subject matter expertise. And of course, in our jobs, it is much more complex than the examples that I just gave, but it is the knowledge that empowers us, subject matter expertise that empowers us, allows us to make educated guesses and to make decisions that we then can convey to people around us through our leadership skills. I'm going to give you another sort of non-work related example, something that happened to me about 3 weeks ago. I'm a beginner sailor, and with a group of friends who don't sail, I went on a boat in the Chesapeake here in Maryland. The winds progressively became stronger and stronger, and I became more and more sort of uncomfortable with going to the bay. I was still driving the boat out of the channel to the open water area. And at some point, I made the decision to turn back. People were disappointed. They all came to sail, but the boat was practically overpowered with the very strong gusty winds. So this is where I had to apply my subject matter expertise, quite limited in sailing, but I did take classes. So I explained to them how I felt and how dangerous it was becoming. And then I used my leadership skills and just conveyed those messages and turned the boat back to the marina. I'm sure they're still not happy, and I'm 90% sure that I made the right decision, and it was a very hard decision because I disappointed those who came with me on a trip. And we still had to pay for the boat because we did use it even though we didn't sail. So it was hard, but this is the sort of an example where so many things came together at literally in 10 minutes that allowed me to make a decision that probably, you know, if it didn't feel right, it probably was not right. But I didn't use that, I didn't make that decision arbitrarily. Well, just don't feel like sailing. It was not that type of decision. It was decision made based on the limited knowledge of sailing that I have. And then I persuaded my team boat mates and told them that the boat seemed to be quite significantly overpowered with the winds, and I don't think that it's safe to sail. So these are the types of the situations that we face in daily lives, as well as in our jobs. And this is what distinguishes a person as a leader from a follower, is that ability to step forward and make a decision based on the knowledge, and then convey the decision to others using the leadership skills, explaining why 10 reports became obsolete, or why the boat needs to be turned back to the marina, or why going down a very advanced slope is not a good idea. Sometimes they're good decisions, and sometimes they're decisions to turn back. But in all those circumstances, those are the decisions of the leaders, not the decisions of the followers. And when people see this in you and see that you make those decisions regularly, irrespective of your title, they will recognize you as a leader, and they will start coming to you for an advice. And this is what will change your career course, as well as will change your personal life. And in some instances, it is okay to sit back, especially if that is your comfort zone. But if you do have that craving inside you and you don't know where to start, this is the starting point. So back to the slide. So the project manager role, even though I'm talking about the project management here, I gave you the examples outside of the project world. But still, what makes a leader is somebody who is accountable for the execution, whatever the execution is, whether it is your job project in your office, or it is something in your personal life, your dream vacation or hobby. It is the plan that you have in mind, how to execute, or a decision that you thought through about changing the course based on the circumstances and the conditions. It is recognizing those conditions changed or new conditions, and applying them to your original course, and maybe still proceeding with your intended course, or turning your boat back, or changing your decision. It is risks and your ability to identify those risks and convey to others why you see the risks and how you want to mitigate the risks. This is what distinguishes a project manager from a project manager leader, as opposed to somebody who just comes in and fills out project schedules and status reports. It's somebody who steps back and thinks critically and doesn't take things at face value, and applies his skills and knowledge, and maybe proceeds with the originally intended course, or maybe changes it based on the discoveries that the person makes along the way. So what makes a leader? Of course, the leadership skills, the project management skills or subject matter expertise, and the interpersonal skills to persuade people to follow and demonstrate that your decisions are not arbitrary, they're not random, they're not just because you feel so or you want to do that. But these are thought through decisions, and they are in best phase for yourself and those around you. So the leadership skills include in-depth knowledge, subject matter expertise. You cannot lead if you do not know what you're talking about. You need to understand what you are driving in quite good level, and also know other subject matter experts and engage with them and get their opinions as needed, because as the jobs become more and more complex, it is just not humanly possible to know it all. It is the ability to recognize that you need others for input and collaborate with those and bring them as your advisors and substantiate your opinion based on the input from others. It is understanding of the organizational structure or structure around you and understanding whether you can lead or not and how the structure allows or empowers you to lead. It is the knowledge of strategy. Where does your company go? And why is that important? Well, you can sell your points better if you substantiate your new decisions and convey to the leadership that your decisions are aligned with the overall organizational strategy. And it's of course your stakeholders, those around you, and it is your leadership ability to demonstrate to them that your decisions are in their best interests and they will benefit from your decisions as well. The subject matter expertise, it's of course knowing what it is in stake, what is it that you are doing, skiing, sailing, what kind of job you're doing, and understanding it quite well. It is the overall framework of the work that you are doing. It's assurance that you will deliver quality results. It's ability to manage risks and execute on budget and on time, right? No, even a dream vacation has to be within your vacation days and on budget, or after that, a dream may become a very harsh reality. And your interpersonal skills, your strong leadership skills, communication, your ability to talk to different people, to executives and your team members and people around you, and give them the same message in different ways, showing that you thought through their interests. And it's of course the soft skills and the ability to say, hey, even though I'm going to turn the boat, maybe we could go to a restaurant instead and still have some good time, even though that's not what we originally planned. And our last poll, it's what characteristics define a leader? And let me launch that. Okay. I'm talking to you via Zoom and you can see me even though I'm in Washington, DC, and many of you are not. And of course, artificial intelligence and robots pretty soon, and starting already, they will be working along our side. And with that, many of the findings and many of the topics from this presentation are also captured in my book, The Practitioner's Guide to Program Management. It is a professional book published by the PMI here in the United States and in China. It's available on Amazon, and if you're interested, you could buy and learn more. But I'm very interested in questions that you may have, and with that, let me turn the floor to you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to be as interactive as possible. And I'm not only here to share my thoughts, but also to learn from you and what you think and how you think. So please, let's start with questions. You can type right here in the Q&A. Or in the chat if you would like. Or just share your thoughts. Doesn't have to be a question, but maybe you have comments or examples of your own based on the content that I shared, and maybe it would be interesting to learn how things are in other countries and how different the situations are in where you are. If there are no questions, maybe just how is pandemic maybe we could talk about how pandemic changed our lives. That's, I'm sure, a burning question for all of us. Feel free to share anything. Okay, I see a question. What was the most inspiring leadership book you ever read? My answer is going to be a little bit unusual. I'm a huge fanatic of Jules Verne, and all his books were very inspirational leadership books to me, especially The Children of Captain Grant. I read it as a child, and I was absolutely mesmerized. First of all, I grew up by the mountains, Ural Mountains in Russia. So open water was something very different from where I grew up. But what sort of changed my perspective as I read those books were extreme strenuous circumstances that the characters of Jules Verne faced, and not your typical daily, home or office situations, and how they made decisions, facing storms, broken boats, being captured by cannibals, and how they managed through all those situations. Even though those were fictional characters, to me, they were incredible leaders who went through the extreme hardships, but yet managed through. And I understand those are books, fictional books. And in reality of life, likely nobody will, escape from the cannibals. But still, their strength, endurance, extreme sense of adventure, extreme ability to deal with the myriads of very difficult and unusual circumstances. That's what inspired me as a leader, and of course, made me, I guess, or shaped me as an adventurous person. It's probably at that time that I sort of grew to be stronger, so that at some point when I had to face the immigration to the United States, I kind of drew the strengths from the characters of Jules Verne. I hope I answered your question. Okay, let me check the chat. The Children of Captain Grant. And I read the books in Russian language, so I don't know the exact title in English. But if you email me, I'll be happy to look it up and see how it's being translated. I agree that the world needs leaders to step forward now, correct? We're facing very, very strenuous circumstances, unusual circumstances, that the leaders, as they were shaped by their political careers, were not prepared to deal with. It's an unprecedented situation. Okay, any other questions? And it's a good question about the leadership book. Maybe you guys could share what your favorite leadership books are. Feel free to type in the chat. We have 1 minute left, so I think I have more questions. That is a great question. If I know anything about emotional intelligence as a criteria for the CEO role, absolutely. It is your ability to control your emotions, your ability not to show that it hurted you personally, your ability to still be objective in the situations, even though inside you may feel like hell. It is not your ability to hold those emotions inside you. We all are prone to them, and even very tough CEOs, I'm sure, have those moments. But what distinguishes very strong leaders from not so strong leaders or from followers is the ability not to show that you are scared in that given moment. For instance, if you are, facing life-threatening circumstances or very dangerous circumstances, it is your ability not to show that you are scared as everybody else. I'm sure you are. We all are humans and we all are fearful for our lives. But what distinguishes an emotionally intelligent leader is that strength. For instance, in the United States now, there is a new president-elect, Joe Biden. He is an old gentleman. He just turned 78. That places him at the highest category for COVID-19. But yet nowhere in his speeches did anybody hear that he is personally afraid. I know very many elderly people who just don't go out of their houses, and it's perfectly okay. And they're quite fearful. I'm sure Biden recognizes that threat to him as well, as I'm sure he's worried about it as a person, but nowhere through the election campaign did he show that this is his fear. And that's what distinguishes him as an emotionally intelligent and a strong leader. Okay, somebody shared Jonathan Livingston Seagull is a book about the bird who flies. Very, very good. Okay, we came to an hour. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. I truly enjoyed sharing my thoughts and my knowledge with you. Thank you for joining from all the places where you are. Be safe out there, and feel free to keep in touch through Small World or through my personal website at irenedubinsky.com. Thank you very much.